Okay, look, I forgot to talk to you about what did Curt say? Well, Curt, he's concerned with the dog Conan, the hero dog that took down al-Baghdadi. He's been really working up those memes and sending some things back and forth. He's all over that story, so maybe we'll give an update on to how Conan, I think that was released. That might have been a breach of security, letting him know what the name is. Chris, what's Chris been up to? Well, look, I did a ride with both of those guys last night. Once again, it killed me. Chris has really been involved in woodworking lately, buying saws. So if you're in the market for a table saw, I may be able to get you a good deal on one of those. I think he's trying to close out some deals. Also closing out some of his bikes. If you're a tall rider, maybe find us. We'll see if we have some product for you. The Tour of California, it's been put on hiatus. AEG, the managing company for that. So we're going to break down kind of some ideas on there, read their press release, go over some speculative reasons as to why it was canceled, what can be done about this, and is the race in doubt forever? I mean, the announcement, and we'll read the press release here, they indicated they were on a hiatus, 1-year hiatus. Look, I'm wearing my California shirt today for those of you on YouTube in honor of California, this decrepit state. There was just a study I read out about California. It's got an outflux of people leaving the state. I think they said around 150,000 people on average a year they're losing in the population. Now, that's then there's foreign migrants that are coming in, and so they said that it's probably, even with that, it's still probably a net loss of around 40,000. It's also one of the highest taxed states in the union. Personal property, sales, everything combined, it's really punitive. And then the mindset of people wanting to get out of the state of California among Democrats and Republicans is both very, very high. It's a tough state. It's a beautiful state. It's got a lot going for it. Silicon Valley, Tesla's here. Yet we're like Haiti, and we can't keep our power on. It's a weird dynamic. We're literally look. I'm lucky. I'm not in the quasi-governmental situation of being under PG&E. I'm under a different SMUD, Sacramento Municipal Utility District. So I'm not being hit by this, but my law partner, he happens to be under PG&E. He's getting hit with it. Curt, he's getting his power cut off quite a bit. There's a lot of problems in this state, and I think the Tour of California, these aren't necessarily related, although the fire and closing down the roads, those may be have an issue. But it's just kind of an indication of the state itself, and just the state of, when I say the state, I mean the current circumstance of cycling. So Tour of California, it's been around, I think, 14 years. It's had a good run here. Started off a little bit smaller. It's got high UCI ranking, which kind of kicked out some of the lower continental teams. But it's been going and progressing. And, in the last few years, I've covered it, last 3 years with the podcast on the media side. And it feels, Bernal comes. It used to have Wiggins and some other big hitters coming in. Some of them Bernal was here 2 years ago that wins it. And he then goes and wins the Tour de France this year. Pogacar wins it last year. He's a breakout in the Vuelta. So it's definitely not a race where you're having necessarily nobody's win. So it's been pretty significant. They changed the slot from early in the season where they had some weather issues to in May where the weather was better. I talked to town of Folsom. I'm trying to remember the guy's name there a few years ago. He was given the press release about the race starting in Folsom. And, he says it's a boon for the economy. Most of the businesses like it. But I still think the business of AEG, the company that runs it, putting it on there. Let's actually get to their press release and just see if we can break down a little bit as to what their reasoning for it. And by the way, they were a little cryptic. They didn't really give a good total understanding of what the reason is for. They just said it was a financial situation. It has become more challenging each year to mount the race. This new reality has forced us to reevaluate our options. We are actively assessing every aspect of our event to determine if there is a business model that will allow us to successfully relaunch the race in 2021, said race president and executive vice president of AEG Sports, Kristen Klein, in a statement on Tuesday. I'm going to go here, kind of read a thing from Cycling News about Jonathan Vaughters, kind of his take on this. He's uniquely qualified in a sense. He runs a company, EF Education or Slipstream Sports. He's had some financial difficulties of trying to get sponsors. He understands that whole world fairly well. So some of his quotes are, as he said, this is pure speculation, and you can quote me on that. This is how it is read it. I certainly do hope that this is Jonathan Vaughters, as related to Cycling News. I certainly do hope that we'll be able to bring the race back in 2021. But I think it's a bit of a bellwether as to the direction of American cycling, Vaughters said. Cycling in the U.S. is a different marketplace than it is in many places. We're never going to have these big money, massive state-backed races like this new race in Saudi Arabia or the UAE Tour. That's never going to happen in the U.S. Municipalities or government entities are not going to sponsor cycling. Our political system doesn't allow for that. It has to come from completely private dollars. So yeah, after 14 years of saying it's not sustainable, like I said, AEG just kind of said that the financial situation will have to reassess that in the future. Now, here's some more on Vaughters. I don't have exact figures, Vaughters told Cycling News, but I am happy to be quoted in speculation. I love it. From an overhead cost standpoint, the Tour of California probably cost almost as much as a tour, which seems ridiculous, but that is probably the reality of the situation because the road closures, closing down the start and finish areas. At the race like the Tour de France, the government supports the race as part of Patrimoine de France situation, where it's part of French culture, whereas in the U.S., we just have to pay for that. It makes it much harder to produce big events like that in the U.S. Vaughters said that he believed the participation in these events, like Tour, the New York and Boston Marathon, those are a little different. Look, those are more like crits or the Tour, Nevada City Classic or something like that, where it's on the same road every year. The team, the town kind of gets around that. City of Boston, even though it closes down those roads, it's the exact same ones every year, and it's a one-time event. It's possibly a little bit easier. I don't know. Ironman, kind of a different model as well. TV revenue might be part of the problem here, that it's not being shared out the way you'd probably like to be have it done. So then he goes in to talk about the type of adventure racing, the gravel races, the Dirty Kanza, blah blah blah. That one of his riders, Lachlan Morton, did the GB Duro, which was, he's sleeping in the tent in the bushes and riding this. Now, look, that's nice. Those races are going to exist, but we're not talking about a gravel grinder. We're talking about the Tour of California, which is trying to compete with, actually at the same time, it's competing with the Giro. And we'll get into that in a little bit here. So you don't want to compare it directly to these other more grassroots events that is more of an experience for the average rider. These are not the average riders. These are World Tour riders coming in, and now how do we support this to be able to view it? I don't know what the viewing statistics and the data is on that, but on the Tour of California. Okay, so then some speculation came about that my first thoughts was perhaps this was one of the things where it was coming about because of the equal pay law that had just been passed. Now, the original, when this law was being, and if you don't know about it, it's basically saying if you're using public access roads, if you want to get a permit for that, you have to offer equal prize money for anything, equal genders. And with that, the initial thing was that you had to offer equal event time, I believe. Actually, looking out through the actual law itself, it actually just and we'll get into that because it plays a part here. But Bertine, she's a cyclist that really has pushed this on the level. She helped with this bill. She was really pushing this. So she was, following the announcement that AEG was doing this. There was speculation on social media and online that perhaps having to do equal prize money, equal participation on the roads was part of the problem. The way I read the rule is just prize money. So Tour of California last year had equal prize money for men and women. Now, they didn't have equal days. I still think that could be a part of the problem. Maybe Tour of California, the way they're reading the rule is they're not wanting to run it, because Bertine herself, she was complaining that, look, the men last year, they had 7 days, women had 3 or 4. This is not equal still, so the payout still is not the same. Well, if you're getting the same prize money, you're actually getting more for your buck, bang for your buck than the men are. With that said, they're actually not racing the same amount of distance. So there's all kinds of little problems in there, but maybe AEG was concerned about any kind of lawsuit, and so they need to reassess that. I don't think that was necessarily the case for the way that the law has been written, the way it was proposed initially. I believe so. But once again, this AB 467 is a law, and we'll look at it. Maybe we'll take a jump at it right here just to kind of see what it actually is discussing. And look, this is going to actually impact, I think it's going to impact cycling outside the Tour of California. It's going to impact local cycling. I've already been in contact with a few directors who are proposing some, shall we say, unique fields this coming year. So look, this is all under the Fish and Game. They just added this event thing in here. So event means a competition event that uses lands owned by the state that are under the jurisdiction of the commission. So public, roads is a exact example. Prize compensation includes prize or purse money, others prizes, goods, or other compensation. Okay, could just be tubes and stuff there. The commission for any event that awards prize compensation to competitors in gendered categories shall require as a condition of a lease that for any participant level that receives prize compensation, the prize compensation for each gendered category be identical to each participant level. The commission shall not approve a lease for an event that does not comply with this condition. So the way it's written there, I had a little discussion on back and forth with Chris. His understanding with that is like, look, if you're offering a prize for this competition, the women just have to be the same prizes. But I read this and I would worry as a director, if you are offering a men's 45 masters category, does that mean that you have to then offer a women's 45 category, same participation? Because if you're going to offer any kind of compensation, $100, 6 places deep, the fact is the women's would be zero in that same field. So if you're offering a gendered, and I don't know, Chris just thinks it's not forcing you to have multiple competition. What you're going to end up doing, you're going to have an open category, and they're just going to say, I don't care what gender you are, it's going to be non-gendered category, open, and we pay the first 6. How's that feel? I mean, there's the seen and the unseen of laws that you put into effect here, forcing someone in, and this is all the marketplace. Look, I saw one of the most, I know you listen to this podcast, but I'm going to call this out. I'm going to say a ridiculous comparison to slavery. Slavery. This is basically saying, hey, this is like making the argument that the cotton prices have gone up since we abolished slavery. First of all, if you were to dig into the economics of slavery, this is a total sidebar. Economics of slavery, it's not what you would think actually. So slave producing, we're not going to get into all that, but I don't think that's what you're looking at. Are you saying women's cycling is that oppressive? They're just not showing up. I think there's a viewership problem. Now, Bertine here in her article, she mentions that look, we show stats that the viewership for women's cycling is there. I would want to look at the data because I think that you might be stretching that a little bit. And just as someone who has a wife, 2 daughters, they're both interested in sports. They're not that interested in viewing those sports. Okay. My one daughter is real big into basketball. She's real big into volleyball. She's real big into football, but she's not real big into watching it. ESPN stats, I would imagine they are overwhelmingly men. Men's are you have fantasy leagues, overwhelmingly men. It's and I'm not saying women aren't interested, and I'm not saying men aren't interested in watching women's sports, but you need, if there's, population is roughly 50-50, you're going to need the women interest in viewing it, because that's really what we're talking about here for the Tour of California to take that on. I don't know. Honestly, I'd like to take a look at some of that data. I'm somewhat speculating here, but I will say I just don't think this law necessarily pertains to this event, the Tour of California. I think it's just other situations. We've talked about the economics of cycling. It's rough. You're not charging gate fees. You try to, we're able to go right up to the cyclists and talk to them beforehand. The roads closure, but no one's taking a ticket. They're trying to do VIP stuff to recoup costs. And then they're really looking at tourism is the way that those towns benefit. So are they charging the towns to have the open? I don't really know all the details in there. The ultimate reality is it's too bad to see the Tour of California go away, and I don't see it coming back. Now, I will say this, depending on how Tour of Colorado went away, the only big one left in the U.S. now is the Tour of Utah. Maybe the USA Crit Series gets a bigger influx, but you're not going to get World Tour teams, and that's really ones that are driving it. So, so sad to see it going away, and we'll keep you updated on this situation as it progresses. Look, maybe one of the big factors was this. The Giro has been announced, and at the Giro announcement was Peter Sagan. Peter Sagan's been one of the most prolific Tour of California winners over the last few years. He had decided to do the Giro. That was going to conflict with the Tour of California, so obviously he wasn't going to be here this year. Did he have foreknowledge of this, or did he kill the race itself? Maybe he killed it.